Hi, how are you?
Good to see you. Good to see you because I was thinking of hosting someone who has experience scaling communities in B2B setting, and I couldn't think of many except for Revenue Collective. So it's sort of good to have you here. Talk about your experience scaling, how you guys have done it so far, and what lessons you've learned.
Yeah, I'm excited. I love talking about community, so very happy to be here.
Awesome. Kathleen, before we start, there are some few housekeeping items for the attendees. We have sort of launched a poll in case folks want to give us some responses on how they engaged in community so far, what groups do they use, is it Slack, etc., etc., and we can try to take those questions. And we also, I think, giving a Starbucks gift card to folks who are spent 30 minutes plus in the conversation or ask a question to Kathleen. And then yeah, I think that's about it. That's what Reagan, one of my teammates, wanted to share. But before we officially begin, Kathleen, I would love to sort of explain to the audience about your current role and what does Pavilion do. If you can start with that, that'll be great.
Sure. So I will start with what Pavilion is and then explain what I do there. So
Right.
Pavilion is a 10,000 member plus global community of go-to-market executives, which in our parlance means the CEO slash founder, and then the heads of marketing, sales, customer success, and RevOps. That's the go-to-market leadership team. And we were founded in 2016 with the mission of helping every go-to-market leader achieve and unlock their full professional potential. I think we've all heard those stats around positions like CRO, CMO, et cetera. The average tenure is something like 18 months
Yeah.
or shorter these
Yeah.
days. And it's only getting more complicated with
Yeah.
the introduction of advanced AI and other technologies like that. And it's lonely at the top, right? If you're a
Right.
go-to-market executive, you generally don't have a lot of peers
100%. Yeah.
to help you out and support you. And so we look to provide that support network, and we do it in four ways. We do it through community, education, insights, and events. And so I actually joined Pavilion back in 2019 as a member. And it's been with me through multiple stages of my career, looking for a job, in a job, looking to do my job better, positioning myself for a promotion, et cetera. And in October of last year, I had the opportunity to join the company full time, which I did. It's been fantastic. I've always believed in the mission, and having experienced it as a member, it made it a really easy decision. And now today, I am SVP of Marketing and Member Experience, which basically means that I lead marketing, customer success, and sales for Pavilion.
Oh, I didn't know that. Actually, that's a surprise. I thought only marketing came under your Pavilion, but you're actually leading CS and sales as well. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're really very much a member-led growth model.
Right. Right.
And so we see, it's very PLG-like, and we see
Right.
our greatest leverage for growing as an organization has always been and continues to be happy members.
Hmm.
And so how we market ourselves is very much premised on satisfying the existing member base that we
Right.
have, thus, having customer success underneath of me. And then honestly, with sales, so much of it is how we work with people who are referred into our community, which again comes back to happy customers. And so it's an interesting situation, and it's a little different for a marketing leader, but it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome, Kathleen. One of the community that I really admire is Saster. With what Jason Lemkin has done, and he recently posted something. I'll basically share my screen and show it to you if that works. Can you see my screen, Kathleen?
Yes.
He posted this thing which I thought was a very powerful comment. Community is hard, but realistically, you can only be part of one or two actively. Add a ton of value, go narrow, build something that matters. No one else can get anywhere else. Get 100 fans and go from there. Otherwise, it's just crappy content marketing, really, right? And I would love to sort of have you react to it because in pandemic, community was such a hot topic for everyone out there. Everybody started creating communities. Like, what is your sort of reaction to that? And like, in general, what is happening in the market currently in terms of communities happening left, right, and center?
Yeah, I mean, Jason always has strong opinions. I love that about him. And I mean, to a certain extent, I agree. I
Mm,
think community is such an interesting topic, as you say. Like, communities, first of all, have been around for a long time, right? This
mm,
is not a new construct. Community is something that was studied in archaeology going
right.
back thousands of years. And what we've done really is we've just evolved the concept of it to be more of an online first construct. And so this isn't new, but what has happened is, as a result of COVID, there was this dramatic acceleration of community participation because it served as a lifeline to so many of us at a time when we couldn't leave our homes and we couldn't interact with people. So, I think that sped up what was already happening. And as a result, you have a lot more people participating, but not a lot of people who really understand how to make community work for them. And that's where I think he's really tapping into something important, which is that it's not enough to just join. It's not enough to just kind of visit the community chat, whether that's in Slack or Teams or Discord or on a proprietary platform or on LinkedIn, right? It's not enough to just be there. You have to be an active participant to get value out of it. And that's on the member side. And that takes time, right? And so he said you could probably only do one or two. And that tracks with me. Like, I'm a member of a lot of communities, but I'm really invested in probably
one or
two of them. And it is an investment. But I think the biggest misnomer I've seen, and I still hear it a lot to this day, is leaders who say things like, I don't know how people have time to participate in those communities. They must not have enough to do at work. And what I think that those people are really missing is that the point is that today, in today's world, participating in communities is part of the job. It's part of work because it's the ultimate cheat code. It's how you learn the fastest. It's how you make the best, warmest connections. And you can generate pipeline and revenue in communities if you do it right. It's not about spamming and selling. It's about authentic, organic participation, which requires an investment of time.
Now I think about it, Kathleen, just to your point, I remember I was part of a Slack community for event marketers in the very beginning of our company. We tried to participate actively and we got some inbound leads who became our first early customers. So to your point, there's just definitely merit in adding authentic value to those conversations happening in the community so that you can actually build your reputation and company. On that point, you made an interesting point when you were speaking backstage, how communities can be an important part of your go-to-market motion, right? Can you sort of explain what you mean by that and how should brands think about that as part of their go-to-market?
Yeah. So I've had the good fortune to work in two different places that had thriving communities. One was a company called Impact, where I was several years back, and we had a 5,000 member marketing community there. And then today, obviously, in Pavilion, where we have 10,000 members. And so I've been able to see kind of across those communities how different members and companies participate and who gets results from it, right? And what those results are. And so it's made me appreciate what it looks like to truly do this right. And I would say, some people participate in communities purely for personal reasons, and that's fine. But if you are participating as part of a go-to-market strategy, which, by the way, I think every company should have community as a pillar in its go-to-market strategy. And if you don't, you're going to miss out. Because, and I'll just take one step back. I always say this phrase, and maybe one of these days it'll really catch on. Community is the new Google. And I mean it. Like, I used to own an inbound marketing agency. I was a HubSpot partner for many years. And back in that day, we used to always say when people have problems or they need a solution, they go straight to Google and they ask their question. And that still happens, but it's not really the same anymore. In fact, particularly in B2B, if you need to buy something or you need a solution, you're really generally not going to Google first. You're usually going to your community and you're saying, hey, how are you solving for X? And the reasons for that are that you get your answers just as fast, right? Like, Google's quick, but you get better answers and others are doing the homework for you. And that's because you have these trusted relationships. Like, the fact that an answer is coming to you through a community means that it's benefiting from the halo effect of the trust that you've built as part of that community. And so with Google, if you ask a question, you're going to get fast answers, but you're going to have to then go and figure out, can I really trust this information? You're going to have to do additional homework. But with a community, you may not. Like, you may just know if so-and-so said it, it must be true, or it may help you narrow your options and save you time. So it's a cheat code. And as a result, what happens, I go to the community, I ask for these recommendations. I may get 2 or 3 names of companies that can help me with my problem. Like maybe it's what's the best event software, and a couple of names come up, and one of them is Goldcast.
Right.
I'm not then going to go to Google and do an
Exactly.
organic search for
Right.
what's the best event software. I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to put in Goldcast, and I'm going to go
Right.
straight to your website. And so here's what's happening. This is causing buyers to bypass organic search. And therefore, if you want to get at bats as a company, you need to be one of the companies, one of the brands that is mentioned in the communities. So that's a very long way of explaining why communities should be a part of your go-to-market strategy. Because if you don't do it, you're going to miss those at bats. Somebody else is going to get them.
Right.
You're also going to miss the trust that comes with that.
Right. No, very well articulated, Kathleen. Actually, now I think about it, that's actually a pretty cool catchword. Community is the new Google, and that's actually true.
See, it's going to catch on one of these days.
Because I remember doing that for a couple of times just recently, like going and typing in a particular brand name's company name in the Slack search bar and seeing, hey, if somebody has mentioned that particular company and what they say about it. So
yeah, and it's funny because I don't know if you're familiar with Rand Fishkin, who used to be the founder of Moz, and now he has SparkToro, and he just came out with some research where he dug into where direct traffic is really coming from. So we all love attribution. We all love attribution software, but if you're anything like me, you have this giant bucket of website visits that are categorized as direct traffic, and it's a black box, right? And what he's shown is that a lot of that direct traffic comes actually from communities. It comes from places like Slack, like Reddit. So, if you have a lot of direct traffic, probably people are talking about you in a community already. So you asked me earlier, what should it look like as part of a go-to-market strategy? And with all of that foundation as to why we should have it in our go-to-market strategy in the first place, the way I think about this is really sort of a 3x3 matrix, right? There are 3 types of communities. There are communities of product. So you might have the Goldcast community, which is your users. There are communities of practice. And I would say that Pavilion is a community of practice because it's about the practice of go-to-market leadership. And then there are communities of interest. So it might be like, for example, I'm interested in fitness, or I'm interested in attribution. Those are interests. So there's 3 types of communities, and then there are 3 ways that you can participate in communities and have them as part of your go-to-market strategy. You can build your own, in which case you have to choose which of those 3 types of communities you're building, and each one has different implications. You can sponsor somebody's community. We see lots of that in Pavilion. We have companies that sponsor us to gain access to our audience. And then you can organically participate in communities, as your team of subject matter experts. And I think the reality is that in most cases, companies are going to be doing this in a combination of these 3 ways. So, you might, for example, sponsor a community, and then you might also participate organically. So it's not a one or the other.
Although you can just do a combination of things to stand out.
Yeah, exactly. And actually I see there's a question in the chat about the Rand Fishkin research, and I'm dropping the link in right now. So there's the article for you. But, either way, no matter how you do it, whether you're a sponsor, whether you're an organic participant, or what have you, the way to do it right is not to go in and start selling. It is to be the most helpful person in the room. And I think you said it earlier. This is how you started out. You go in and you find conversations that are relevant to what you know about, and you answer as many questions as you can. You make as many introductions as you're able to do. You're helpful, and you do it regularly. And in doing so, you earn the trust of the community, and you earn the right then when somebody says, who is the best event management software, you earn the right to come and say, actually, that's what we do. And I would love to talk to you. And then nobody minds. It's not a pitch. It's not a spam. 100%. It's organic. And so that's what it looks like when done right.
Right. Again, on that, I just, there are a lot of Q&A that is coming up. So I'll take them one by one after we had a chance to discuss some of the questions. One question I had that I want to pick your thoughts on is, what what platforms have you seen communities live in? And I've seen that question come up a lot in different channels, and I don't know if there's a perfect answer. So want to hear your thoughts first, uh, and then actually I'll let you answer the question first, and then I'll ask the next question.
Yeah, this is the age old question, right? And I think it depends. The answer is it depends.
Mm.
So, some of the more common, well, let me back up. When I was at Impact, our community lived on Facebook. It was a Facebook
I
group.
see
And
Facebook group.
I mean, I think back then that made sense. I think we started it in 2017
Right,
when Facebook still had a lot of traction. And I
right,
would say these
right,
days, I probably wouldn't do a
right,
Facebook group.
right.
Um, and then today Pavilion's on Slack, and there are pluses and minuses to Slack. Slack
Seriously,
is great. It's part of many people's daily workflow,
right.
but if you are on a paid Slack plan, that gets really
Yes,
expensive over time.
yes.
So you have to think about the future and maybe
Mm.
how large your community is going to get. And you also have to
Yeah.
think about where your audience is. So for
Right.
example, my husband is VP of marketing for an open source software company, and they have a thriving developer community, and that community lives on Discord. And
Discord. Mm.
developers are very, comfortable in Discord, and
Right.
it's part of their daily workflow. So that makes sense. So I would say there's not one right answer. And certainly there are communities that build their own platforms.
Got it. Got
Um,
it.
I think it's a factor of a couple things. Like I said, it's number one, cost. Number two, where is your audience most likely to participate? Because you want
Right.
to create as few barriers as
True.
possible
So
for
true.
them to regularly be involved. And
So true. So
if
true.
you're asking them to leave their daily workflow and go someplace else, like nothing kills a community faster, right? And I remember actually back in the day, I'm dating myself. A long time ago, when I owned a HubSpot partner agency, HubSpot had a pretty thriving community in LinkedIn groups.
Oh,
And
interesting.
then they decided to move it to their own built community that they
I,
created.
I was thinking the same thing, and you got to go through like multiple hoops and logins to
It
something.
died. It died. Like nobody participated because they,
Right.
they didn't want to have to go to a third party website to have the
Right.
conversation. And so I do feel like it's not that you shouldn't move your community or
Right.
create your own solution, but it's really hard to
To
get people to change their habits as far as where they spend
correct.
their time every day.
Correct.
It's the reason grocery stores put the candy in the checkout line. Like that's where you're already standing and you're
Right.
more likely to buy.
Right.
Similarly, yeah, Dave Gerhardt is doing that now, as somebody said in the chat.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's
Right.
always a risky move, but not to
Right.
say it can't work. It's just tough. So
Correct. And also to your point, we have our community in Slack, and we realize that if you're not paying in Slack, I think the things disappear after 90 days or something like that, and you just like lose all the conversations that happened previously. It's not perfect, as you said.
yeah, it is tough. I mean, and there's a lot of history in communities, and that's where a lot of the value is. Like, for example,
Mm.
in Pavilion, I mean, we've had amazing conversations happening in the Slack channels for years because the community started, I think it was in 2016. And it's not to say that we couldn't exist if we didn't
Right.
have the full history, but we would lose so much of the richness of the knowledge that's been shared
Mm.
over time if we were to do away with that. So
Uh, so is it a pay? Do you guys pay for the premium Slack, Kathleen, or is
we
it?
do have the premium Slack.
Oh
Yeah.
wow, got it. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And final question, Kathleen, before I move to Q&A. There's a lot of Q&A, so I want to make sure that we take that Q&A. One of the things that I've always found difficulty is when a community starts, the initial 100 people make or break a community, right? They try to bring organic engagement, add folks into the community, etc. But after that, when it scales to an extent like what you mentioned, right, 5,000 members, 10,000 members, it just gets very hard to keep folks engaged because it's no longer their thing. It's just become much bigger than usual. Like, would love to hear your lessons on what have you observed that makes some few things stick even if it scales beyond a particular number of people in the community.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, Kishore, we haven't nailed this.
Right.
When I joined Pavilion, it was probably maybe 1,000 people, and now it's 10,000 people.
Oh
And
wow.
and you're so right. Like every community, as it gets bigger, there's this evolution where people feel like they're losing the intimacy
Right.
of the community,
Right.
and that's really hard. That's probably one of the biggest challenges of a growing community. And I would say
Mm.
what I can share with you is what we're testing and kind
Mm.
of what I
Would
believe,
love to hear that. Yeah.
but don't take any of this as gospel. So I would say that, we do have a belief that you need to have communities within the community. And so at Pavilion, we're organized in what we call core groups and then functional groups. So when you join, you're put in a group of people that are in your local geographic area. And we think that's important because you're more likely to be able to connect in person, and it gives you a different sense of connection than you might otherwise have. And then you're also put into a functional channel. So in my case, I'm a marketing leader, so I'm in the CMO channel, and it's a community of marketers. And so, those are two sub-communities within the community where I personally have my strongest relationships. But I wouldn't say that's enough, right? Like you can't just drop someone in and expect them to feel intimacy. Right. They have to have ways of building relationships. And so one of the things that I'm finding is that in-person events
100%.
are tremendously valuable. And we do that in the form of salon dinners. And so we put on over 100 of these dinners a year. They're 20 or fewer people, private room at a restaurant, really intimate, confidential setting. Right. Those are probably our most loved event. And that's how Pavilion got its start. But we also have other events like summits and conferences. But what we've introduced this year, and this goes to what I was saying, kind of things we're doing to address this growth challenge, is something called Pavilion X. And Pavilion X is an attempt to give some ownership of the community to the members. So I've always believed and observed that communities truly become successful when they become self-organizing.
Right.
And so, that means members taking over in some way or another. And when I saw it back at Impact, when we would have members begin to police the chat in the community and call people out who weren't following the community's norms and rules. And that's a good thing, right?
100%,
And at Pavilion, I think what we're looking to see is, can we get to a point where members really own the creation of local events? So we're trying to create a set of ground rules, right? Because we have to protect the brand, but also give members freedom to do that. And so whether it's, hey, I'm organizing a group hike, or I'm organizing a banquet, these are the types of things that I think give members more control and allow them to create a local experience that is unique to their local area. And so we're in somewhat early days with that. But I'm really excited about it. And I think we're seeing initial bubbles of excitement. Like we have a fantastic chapter in Austin, Texas, where there's a man named BJ, and he's just so great at planning local events. And so, the Washington, DC chapter where I live, Jason Moore has been planning monthly happy hours. That's the kind of thing that I think we're starting to see really work. And members are like, I see you every month at happy hour. You're one of my people. And now when I go into my virtual meeting with my group, I feel a sense of connection.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes it good. No, even me, for example, right? I think I'm a big lurker in communities. I don't contribute a lot these days. I just learn things and move on. But I think if I'd known those people a lot more in an intimate fashion, I would love to contribute and say, hey, here is what I've thought about it, and sort of be more vulnerable and transparent about it. So I think that's a fair argument to make and test out to see if it actually scales.
And I think also being the person in the community who is the organizer. So one of the reasons I got this job is that I was one of the two founding chapter heads of the Washington, DC chapter. And so I was organizing. I was organizing events. I was welcoming new members, and it there's something to be said for the platform that gives you as well. And I met a lot of people through that. And I think that's another way, if you're thinking about community as part of your go-to-market strategy, you can be a person who steps up and volunteers to do more to help organize the community. And I think that puts you in a tremendous position to make great connections, to build trust. So that's what I would advise people who are looking to get more out of their community involvement.
Awesome. Okay, then I'm going to take a few questions that people have asked in the tab. So let me take them. This is a tough one, but I'll still have you answer it. How do you effectively measure the impact and ROI of community building efforts beyond just the traditional metrics like engagement and attention?
That is a great question. And I think it depends on what your objective is. So two different scenarios. When I was at Impact, we had a community, and we were definitely looking at the community as a long-term play to drive pipeline for the company. And it wasn't a product community per se. I mean, it sort of was because it was called Impact Elite, but the conversations weren't necessarily about the product. And so we did look at, we had ways of capturing who was in the community, and then kind of looking at how that drove pipeline. And again, it was a very long-term play. So I think that's one way. And I think, in Pavilion, community is the product. And so we're definitely looking at NPS is something that we watch hawkishly every single day. Like I have a channel in our Slack where I see every NPS result that comes in and I'm reading it all the time. But I think, as the questioner asks, I definitely think engagement is a big one. I think retention is a big one. And then I would go back to what I just said earlier, which is, to what extent is it self-organizing? Are people stepping up and volunteering? Because the people that are going to step up and volunteer, they are the people that are getting the most value. Or think they're going to get a lot of value. And so if you have a lot of volunteers, if you have a lot of people willing to step in and help, that is also a great signal.
Right. Kathleen, on that point, I'm actually curious to know if you look through these NPS responses, right? Qualitatively, why are people excited about it and why are people not happy about it? Like, what is some of the things that you have sort of collected from your...
Yeah. It's so funny because I just was talking to my head of member success about like building me a spreadsheet, which is almost like a heat map. Basically what I said to him was make it 2 columns, positive and negative, and then down the left side, make it certain words that come up all the time.
I see.
And I want to know, like, for example, salon dinners. So I think Hillary mentioned in the chat that salon dinners are incredible and they make the Pavilion membership totally worth it. And we hear that a lot. People often cite salon dinners as one of their favorite things. And so that would be like, check in the positive column. But there are some people who will write in and say, I couldn't get into any of this quarter's salon dinners. And so I'm really angry. Or I had a bad experience at this one salon dinner because I didn't like the host. And so it's just kind of funny because sometimes it's the exact same thing in both columns. And that's why it really is a qualitative exercise. It's like, I love NPS for that reason, because you can really dig in and start to understand the nuance behind what's working and what's not.
Makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Fantastic. This question from Abhishek, Kathleen, what are the biggest moderation challenges you have faced while scaling a community, let's say?
Oh, I think probably the number one challenge is something that anybody who's ever been in or created a community can appreciate. And it is unsolicited spam and pitching. So we do have a rule in our community that it is a no pitch zone. And so people are not supposed to come in and be self-promotional. We do have a channel for offers. So like you can go to a certain channel and say, hey, I want to give Pavilion members a discount. And we even have a channel for events where if you're doing a webinar, you can post it. But you're not supposed to go in and say, I can increase your web traffic 10x with my SEO services. And you're not supposed to do that in our Slack or elsewhere. So you are also not supposed to once you join, you have access to the Pavilion member directory, and you're not supposed to go to LinkedIn and start to DM people or send people emails.
I see.
But it happens. And so what I do appreciate, and this goes back to my point about self-organization, is that a lot of times I'll find out about it because members will send me a screenshot and say, this is happening in my DM. And we'll reach out to the people and say, hey, you can't do that. And most of the time, people are pretty responsive, but every now and then you have a multiple time violator.
Awesome. This is a question that I'm sure you have some thoughts on. How do you strike the right balance between maintaining a sense of exclusivity and accessibility to ensure both engagement and growth, right? And do you even have to strike the balance, right? Like, is it? Yeah. So what's
this is a great question. Really good question. And it's something that we're constantly working on, because in the very beginning, you mentioned earlier, Pavilion used to be called Revenue Collective. That's what it was named when I joined. And back in those days, you had to be referred to become a member, and you had to be interviewed in order to join. And so it was pretty exclusive. We've really grown since then. We don't require that now because our mission is pretty broad, wanting to help go-to-market leaders excel in their careers. And so we want to be able to deliver upon that mission for as many people as possible. So what that means is that now we have a wide variety of experience levels and sophistication within the community, which is fine. And we have solutions for all those people. But at the end of the day, for example, our most experienced members, while I think a lot of them are very happy to teach Pavilion University classes and to answer questions in Slack, because that is our ethos, it's give to get. I think they also want opportunities to be in smaller rooms with people
Yes.
at their level. And
Yeah.
so we are actually, we haven't even announced this publicly. So here I go, scooping myself. But we have something we're working on, which are premium communities. And so, for example, we did a very early alpha launch of something called CMO Premium after our CMO Summit, which is to be in that little community, you have to have held the title CMO. You can't have been a VP, you can have been a VP of marketing, but you have to have held the title CMO, and you have to have done it at a company with $20 million or more in annual recurring revenue.
I see. Great.
So we'll have a similar thing for CROs, and that is a smaller, more intimate group that will be a part of the bigger pavilion, but we will create opportunities for them to get together as just that group.
Right.
To feel like they're in a community of their true peers.
No, I think that's I can't think of any other answer other than that, Kathleen. Like, forming communities within communities is basically the answer to create exclusivity, and it might make some members unhappy, but that's the reality, and you have to sort of live with it. There is one question from Hillary. Sorry, you want to say something, Hillary?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, there's one question from Hillary. It's a great question also, and it feels like it's the right question to ask. How do you minimize or eliminate takers from your group, or what measures do you make sure members are held accountable to being givers, right? Like, actively contribute to discussions rather than just like, observing things and taking learnings from that. Like, I think this is a very important question, and if this question is solved, I feel a lot of communities will be a lot more interesting to participate in. So
I mean, I actually think the answer is pretty simple, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I would say, first of all, we do have a published kind of member code of conduct and about give before you take. But funny enough, it's right behind me. So Sam Jacobs, who founded Pavilion, published this book called Kind Folks Finish First, which is literally about why having a give first mentality is the secret to unlocking, your full potential and advancing your career. So that's kind of the baseline we started from. It's the ethos upon which our whole community was built. But beyond that, I think, honestly, it takes care of itself, because if you think about it, if you are in a community of members, the members that are the most active givers, when they finally come in and ask for help, so many people naturally step up to help them because they've earned that right and that trust. And when you have somebody who literally hasn't shown up for anything and has an ask, it's not that people don't help them, but I think it's like a pattern, right? If you develop a pattern over time of just being a taker, people will become less and less likely to give to you.
Right.
And the opposite is true. If you develop a pattern of being a giver, people will become more and more likely to want to help and give back.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's very well said. Let me see. This question from Vince. Kathleen, as you try to deliver value to members of community, do you have examples of where your initial thoughts were proven dramatically wrong by the members?
Yeah, definitely. And this is one of the things I do love about Sam, who's our founder. He is usually the first to admit when he's made a bad decision. And I think that has created a culture within Pavilion where we generally are pretty good, I think, at admitting where we screwed up. And I think one of those areas where he started talking about it recently, and we're really looking at how to fix it, is last fall, we abandoned the original concept of chapters. So for many years, Pavilion was all founded on geographic chapters. So I mentioned earlier, I was the co-chair of the Washington, D.C. chapter.
Right.
Everybody in the D.C. area. And there's our biggest chapter in the world is New York, followed closely by London. And we started to see issues with engagement and some other things. And so Pavilion, this was around the time I joined, made the decision to not get rid of chapters, but to basically replace them with what we call core groups, which are kind of similar in the sense that they're loosely geographically based, but restricted to only 150 people. So whereas we had one New York chapter, now we might have 4 or 5 New York core groups.
I see. New York core groups. Got it.
Yeah. And I think we did that. And we did it with the thought that it would create more intimacy because we were limiting the number of people. And there's something called the Dunbar number, which is this theory that if you have more than 150, you can't have meaningful engagement. But it didn't work really well. I mean, it's worked in some instances, but I would say for the most part, members were like, why did you put me in this new group? I had a group I liked my chapter. Please bring back chapters. And so we're actually doing an AMA Thursday of this week with members, whoever wants to come. So if you're a Pavilion member and you're listening, you should come. And Sam is going to be on and invite people in to speak on the stage and basically tell him what's working and what's not, because we want to fix it. And, I think, like I said, he's really good about admitting the mistakes. And Jane asked in the chat, can you have a smaller group of 150 and a larger group? And that may be what happens. I mean, we sort of have that now where we never got rid of the chapter Slack groups, but the problem is we don't have anybody running them, right? We have people running the core groups, but not the chapters. And it's resulted in a decline in local connection. And so I think we've just, what we do know is we needed to renew our focus on the chapter so that people in Washington, D.C. or in New York or in London know that they have their local community and that there's local things happening and they can build those relationships.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Again, one last question from me. Are there any other B2B brands that you've sort of thought of that did a great job in building a community and scaled it? Anything that comes to your mind?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think that there are a lot of brands out there that have communities, but it's different when you have a brand that's selling something that happens to have a community versus a community native community, meaning like Pavilion was built as a community, as the product. And there are a lot of other communities like that these days. And I'm a member of many of them. You have CMO Coffee Talk, you have places like Rev Genius, that are created as communities. And that's one type of a community that I think grows very differently than a company community. And so I know folks have mentioned a few in the chat, and I would agree. HubSpot, I was a member of the HubSpot partner agency community back in the day. And man, I'll tell you, we were tightly knit. That's hard to do because that's a community of product. And funny enough, we were all competitors, but somehow or another we got along really well. So I definitely think they've done a great job.
Good job. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think GTM Partners, Sangram has built a really great community. And I'm sure there are lots of product companies as well. Someone mentioned Gong and Demandbase and, companies like that. So there are definitely examples out there, but I think there's a definite distinction between those communities of product and then communities of practice and interest.
That's awesome. Kathleen. Kathleen, I think we're coming to an end, and I want to make sure that you have enough time to get back to your work, which you sort of were kind enough to take some time out today. And also, before we end the conversation, I just want to give a shout out to our community marketer, who's Reagan, who has just done a phenomenal job scaling our community from, I think, 0 to 500 members. So kudos to her for doing that. Before we end, Kathleen, any readings or books that you've read recently that you would recommend folks, just to not related to community, but anything that related in general?
Well, I mean, we already mentioned Kind Folks Finish First, which is great. I would say I'll show you literally what's on my desk because I have the books that I'm about and in the middle of in front of me. So I have What a Unicorn Knows by Pablo Dominguez at Insight Partners. And this is about the lean methodology, which is really good. I have this book, Sprint. I've always practiced some form of agile marketing, and I'm interested in kind of leveling up. And then I also have my third one, which is The Jolt Effect by Matthew Dixon and Ted McKenna. So these are the guys behind the Challenger sale. So
wow. Okay. Good dense books you're reading. That's awesome. Awesome, Kathleen. But it's been a lot of fun. I learned a bunch, and you guys have done something that not a lot of folks have done in the B2B setting. So it's always fun to listen to your learnings. I think if folks want to, I think somebody said Kathleen should write a book next. That's a pretty amazing sort of comment. If folks want to connect with you, I think they can reach out to you on LinkedIn, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, absolutely. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will definitely connect with you. And I watch my DMs pretty closely. So I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Awesome. But thanks, Kathleen. And thank you for the time today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, folks. See you in a couple of weeks.